They say cats can see things we cannot. The spaces between worlds. The thin places where reality frays at the edges. The entities that exist just beyond human perception. But Miranda Hayes never believed in such nonsense, until the day her tortoiseshell cat, Pepper, brought home something other than the usual dead mouse or mangled bird. Something that would shatter her understanding of the world and the shadows that haunt its edges. A pristine business card, carried delicately between Pepper's teeth. Pure black cardstock with embossed silver lettering that caught the afternoon light as Miranda plucked it from her cat's mouth. The message, simple yet chilling. Call me when you're alone. The shadow behind you. No phone number. No address. Just those 7 words and a signature that made Miranda's skin prickle with goosebumps as she resisted the overwhelming urge to look over her shoulder. It was only paper and ink, she told herself. Yet somehow, in the growing darkness of her apartment, it felt infinitely heavier in her trembling hands. Miranda tossed the business card onto her kitchen counter and tried to forget about it. A prank, obviously. Probably from the neighborhood kids who had too much time on their hands since summer vacation began. She poured herself a glass of wine and settled on the couch with her laptop to finish a work project due the next morning. Pepper jumped onto the armrest, yellow eyes fixed on something in the hallway leading to Miranda's bedroom. There's nothing there, Miranda murmured, not looking up from her screen. Stop being weird. But the cat remained rigid, pupils dilated, tail puffed to twice its normal size. After several minutes of this standoff with the empty hallway, Pepper suddenly relaxed, yawned, and curled up as if nothing had happened. That night, Miranda dreamed of shadows that moved against the flow of light, stretching toward her from impossible angles. She woke gasping at 3:17 a.m., drenched in sweat despite the cool June air flowing through her open window. The business card was on her nightstand. Miranda froze. She distinctly remembered leaving it on the kitchen counter, at least 15 feet away from her bedroom. Pepper must have carried it in, she reasoned, though the cat had never shown interest in moving objects before. She reached out with trembling fingers to touch the card, and recoiled. It was warm, as if recently held in someone's hand. Sleep did not return that night. Morning brought clarity with its harsh light. Miranda photographed the card before leaving for work, sending the image to her best friend Eliza with a joking message. Pepper's bringing home weird trash now. Someone's idea of a creepy joke. Eliza's response came quickly. What card? There's nothing in that pic but your nightstand. Miranda checked the photo. The nightstand was there, her alarm clock, water glass, and a paperback novel. But where the business card should have been, there was only empty space. She took another photo. This time the card appeared, black against the pale wood of the nightstand. She sent it to Eliza. Still don't see anything. Are you messing with me? A cold weight settled in Miranda's stomach. She was already running late for work, so she shoved the card into her purse and hurried out the door, trying to ignore the persistent feeling that someone was following close behind her. At the office, Miranda's day proceeded with an eerie normality that only heightened her unease. During her lunch break, she showed the card to her coworker, Daniel. Nice cardstock, he remarked, turning it over in his hands. But it's blank. Someone give you their contact info in invisible ink. Miranda snatched it back. To her, the silver lettering still gleamed against the black background. Unmistakable. Call me when you're alone. The shadow behind you. That evening, she searched her apartment thoroughly, checking behind doors and inside closets, half expecting to find an intruder who had somehow planted the card as an elaborate psychological torture. She found nothing but dust bunnies and Pepper, who watched her frantic search with unblinking yellow eyes. The business card sat on her coffee table, a dark rectangle against the pale wood. Miranda poured another glass of wine, larger than the first, and stared at it. Call me when you're alone. But how? There was no number. Unless. Miranda picked up her phone and noticed something strange. A new contact had appeared in her address book, one she definitely hadn't created. It was listed simply as Shadow. Her thumb hovered over the name. This was madness. Pure, unadulterated madness. Yet she couldn't deny the growing pressure in her chest, the sense that she was being quietly observed from angles just outside her peripheral vision. Fine, she whispered to the empty apartment. Let's see where this goes. She pressed the call button and raised the phone to her ear. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Miranda Hayes. The voice that answered wasn't a voice at all. but rather the suggestion of one, like the memory of words rather than the words themselves. I was beginning to think you wouldn't call. Who is this? Miranda demanded, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. How do you know my name? I know many things about you, Miranda. I've been watching you for quite some time. From very, very close. Miranda spun around, eyes darting to every corner of her apartment. What do you want? To help you. There's something you need to know. A pause, filled with what sounded like rustling paper. 3 days ago, you received an email from a Dr. Whitaker about participating in a sleep study. You're considering it because the compensation would cover your sister's medical bills. Miranda's blood ran cold. She had told no one about that email, not even Eliza. Don't go, the voice continued. The sleep study isn't what it appears to be. Check the obituaries from Portland, Oregon over the past 6 months. Look for similar studies. Then we'll talk again. The call disconnected. Miranda sat motionless for several minutes, her mind racing to make sense of what had just happened. Eventually, her investigative instincts overcame her fear. She opened her laptop and began searching for obituaries from Portland as instructed. It took nearly 2 hours of methodical searching, but she found them. 6 deaths, all apparently unrelated. Young adults between 25 and 35, all reported to have died in their sleep from natural causes or unexplained circumstances. And all had one thing in common. They had participated in a sleep study conducted by a research group affiliated with Meridian Pharmaceuticals, the same company mentioned in the email Miranda had received. As she read the final obituary, her laptop screen suddenly went black. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought the power had failed, until white text began scrolling across the screen. They harvest dreams to create the perfect sedative, but they take too much. The test subjects never wake up. You would have been next. The screen returned to normal, displaying the obituary she had been reading. Miranda slammed the laptop closed and backed away from it, as if it might bite her. Pepper jumped onto the table beside the business card, sniffed it once, then looked up at Miranda with an expression that seemed almost human in its concern. What have you brought into my home? Miranda whispered. The next morning, Miranda called the number for the sleep study and canceled her participation. The receptionist seemed oddly insistent, offering to increase the compensation by 30%, then 50%. Miranda declined firmly and hung up. 5 minutes later, her phone rang. The screen displayed shadow. They'll be watching you now, the voice said without preamble. You were perfect for their purposes. Chronic insomnia, no immediate family except a sister across the country, a job where your absence wouldn't be immediately questioned. How do you know all this? Who are you? Miranda demanded, a soft sound like distant laughter. I told you. I'm the shadow behind you. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give for now. But I need your help, Miranda. Just as you needed mine. My help with what? Meridian Pharmaceuticals has larger plans than just their sleep study. They've developed something far more dangerous. A drug that doesn't just harvest dreams. It harvests consciousness itself, distilling it into a compound they believe will revolutionize the treatment of mental illness. That's impossible, Miranda said. 3 years ago, you would have said the same about a card that only you can read, or a contact appearing spontaneously in your phone. Miranda had no response to that. There's a flash drive hidden inside the business card, the voice continued. Press the top right corner and bottom left simultaneously. Miranda picked up the card from the coffee table and did as instructed. To her astonishment, the card split along an invisible seam, revealing a wafer-thin drive. This contains evidence of what they're doing. Financial records, lab reports, emails between executives. I need you to get this information to someone who can use it. Why me? Why not do it yourself? Another pause. Because I cannot leave this place. I exist, conditionally. Your cat sensed me, found a way to connect us when she brought you the card. You're my only chance to stop this. Stop what exactly? Phase 2 of their trials begins next week. They're targeting patients at Grant Memorial Hospital, specifically those in the psychiatric ward. Vulnerable people whose testimony would be easily discredited if they survived the procedure. Miranda felt sick. If what you're saying is true, why not go to the police? Meridian has connections in law enforcement. The last person who tried went missing 3 days later. A beat of silence. That person was your father. The world seemed to tilt beneath Miranda's feet. My father died in a car accident 5 years ago. Did you ever see his body? She hadn't. The accident had occurred while he was on a business trip to Seattle. By the time Miranda arrived, the funeral home had already prepared him for cremation. She had decided not to view the remains. This is insane, she whispered. Check the drive, Miranda. Look at the files dated from 5 years ago. With shaking hands, she plugged the drive into her laptop. Hundreds of files appeared, meticulously organized by date. She opened the folder from 5 years prior and found a video file labeled Simply Hayes. The footage was grainy security camera video showing a man being escorted into what looked like a medical facility. Despite the poor quality, Miranda recognized her father immediately. The timestamp showed a date 3 days after his supposed death. He discovered what they were doing. The voice said softly through the phone she had forgotten was still connected. He was going to expose them, but they found him first. They've been using him as a test subject ever since. He's alive. Miranda could barely form the words. In a manner of speaking, his consciousness is elsewhere, but his body remains in their facility outside the city. Miranda closed her eyes, trying to process the impossible information. What do you want me to do? Take the drive to Rebecca Chun at the Chronicle. Don't call ahead. Don't email. Go in person tomorrow morning. Tell her Edward Hayes sent you. Edward, that was my father's name. I know. Rebecca was his contact at the newspaper. She's been looking for proof of his claims for years. Give her the drive, then get out of town for a few days. I suggest your sister's place in Chicago. And then what? Then I find you again. The call ended, leaving Miranda staring at her phone. Pepper jumped into her lap, purring loudly, yellow eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made Miranda wonder. Not for the first time. Just what the cat could see that she couldn't. That night, unable to sleep, Miranda went through more files on the drive. What she found was beyond disturbing. Detailed research protocols for a process called consciousness extraction, successful in animal trials, and now being prepared for human subjects. The technical language was complex, but she understood enough. Meridian had found a way to remove human consciousness from the body, storing it in a solution they called essence. The purpose was ostensibly therapeutic, to repair traumatized minds by temporarily extracting consciousness, treating it outside the body, then returning it. But the research notes told a different story. The extraction process was permanent. The consciousness, once removed, could not be returned to its original host. Instead, Meridian was experimenting with consciousness transfer, moving one person's mind into another's body. The implications were staggering. Miranda nearly screamed when her phone lit up with a text message at 2:37 a.m. They know you canceled. They're coming. Get out now. S. She had barely processed the message when she heard the distinctive sound of her apartment door being unlocked. Pepper's ears flattened against her head, her body low to the ground, facing the hallway. Moving on instinct, Miranda grabbed her laptop, phone, and the flash drive. She shoved them into her backpack along with her wallet and car keys, then scooped up Pepper and headed for the fire escape outside her bedroom window. As she climbed out, she heard her front door open. Through the gap in her bedroom door, she saw 3 figures in dark clothing enter her apartment. One of them spotted her and shouted. Miranda scrambled down the fire escape, Pepper clinging to her shoulder, claws digging through her thin shirt. She reached her car just as the figures emerged from the building's main entrance. Starting the engine, she peeled away from the curb, heart pounding as she checked the rearview mirror. A black SUV pulled out behind her, its headlights off despite the darkness. Miranda drove aimlessly at first, taking random turns through the sleeping city in an attempt to lose her pursuers. The SUV stayed with her, maintaining a consistent distance. Not trying to catch her, just following. Her phone rang. Shadow again. Head east on Franklin Avenue, then take the 3rd right. The voice instructed without greeting. There's a parking garage. Go to the 4th floor, space 423. Leave your car there and take the one in space 415. Keys are under the floor mat. Whose car am I stealing? Miranda asked, already turning onto Franklin. It belonged to your father. It's been maintained and registered in your name for the past 5 years. You're not stealing anything. She followed the instructions, finding the parking garage eerily empty. As promised, a dark blue sedan waited in space 415, older but well-maintained. The keys were exactly where the voice had said they would be. Miranda transferred her belongings and Pepper to the new car, then drove to the exit on the opposite side of the garage. No sign of the SUV. Go to the Chronicle now, the voice said. Rebecca works nights. She'll be there. It's 3 a.m. Trust me. The Chronicle's offices were mostly dark when Miranda arrived, but a light burned in one corner window. She parked across the street, studying the building. How do I get in? Security will stop me. Use your father's press badge. It's in the glove compartment. Sure enough, a laminated press badge sat in the glove compartment, featuring her father's photograph and the Chronicle's logo. The expiration date was still 3 months away. How is this still valid? He's been gone for 5 years. Rebecca has been renewing it. She never gave up looking for him. Miranda took a deep breath, tucked Pepper into her backpack with her head poking out, and crossed the street. The security guard at the entrance barely glanced at the badge, waving her through to the elevators. Rebecca Chin's office was on the 3rd floor. Despite the late hour, she was hunched over her computer, gray-streaked black hair falling across her face as she typed. She looked up when Miranda knocked on the open door. Her eyes widened. You look just like him. You knew my father. It wasn't a question, but Rebecca nodded anyway. Edward was a good man, a good reporter. Her gaze dropped to Pepper's head protruding from the backpack. And who's this? This is Pepper. She brought me something that led me to you. Rebecca's expression shifted, a mixture of caution and hope. What exactly did she bring you? Miranda extracted the flash drive from her pocket. Evidence about Meridian Pharmaceuticals. About what they're doing with their consciousness research. About what they did to my father. Rebecca's hand trembled slightly as she took the drive. How did you get this? I was told to tell you that Edward Hayes sent me. The color drained from Rebecca's face. That's not possible. A lot of impossible things have happened to me in the past 48 hours. Miranda glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see men in dark clothing emerging from the elevator. I was also told to get out of town for a few days after giving you that drive. Rebecca plugged the drive into her computer, quickly scanning through several files. Her expression grew increasingly grim. This is beyond anything I imagined. Even what Edward told me didn't prepare me for this. She looked up at Miranda. You need to disappear. Not just for a few days, indefinitely. Until we can publish this and make sure it reaches the right people. I was planning to go to my sister's in Chicago. Rebecca shook her head. They'll look there first. I have a cabin in the mountains. No internet, no cell service, completely off-grid. You'll be safe there. She scribbled an address on a notepad and tore off the page. Take this. There's a key hidden under the blue rock by the front steps. As Miranda reached for the paper, the lights in the office suddenly went out, plunging them into darkness broken only by the glow of Rebecca's computer screen. They're here, Rebecca whispered. We need to move. Now. The journey to Rebecca's cabin took nearly 6 hours, winding through mountain roads that grew progressively narrower and less maintained. Miranda had left her phone behind at Rebecca's insistence. They can track it, taking only a prepaid burner that Rebecca had produced from her desk drawer. The cabin was exactly as described, small, rustic, and completely isolated. Miles of dense forest surrounded it on all sides, with no sign of other human habitation. Pepper seemed delighted by the new environment, immediately setting off to explore every corner of the one-room structure. Miranda, exhausted beyond measure, collapsed onto the narrow bed. Despite her fatigue, sleep remained elusive. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face from the security footage, being led into that facility. On the 3rd day at the cabin, Miranda was gathering firewood when she spotted something between the trees, a flash of movement that didn't match the natural patterns of the forest. She froze, watching, but whatever it was had vanished. That evening, as darkness fell, she felt the familiar prickling sensation of being watched. Pepper sat in the window, tail swishing slowly, eyes fixed on something outside that Miranda couldn't see. The burner phone rang, startling her so badly she dropped the mug of tea she'd been holding. Shadow appeared on the caller ID, though she hadn't programmed any contacts into this phone. They found Rebecca, the voice said without preamble. She managed to upload the files before they reached her, but she's gone. I'm sorry. Miranda sank onto the couch, a cold numbness spreading through her body. Dead. Taken. Like your father. How did they find her? Someone at the Chronicle. The night security guard reported your visit. Miranda thought of the guard who had barely glanced at her father's badge. Had he recognized it? Called someone. What happens now? She asked. The files are spreading online. Major news outlets are starting to pick up the story. Meridian stock is plummeting. They're desperate. which makes them dangerous. Am I safe here? A pause. For now, but I need you to do something else. Something only you can do. What's that? I need you to find your father. Miranda's grip tightened on the phone. You said he was at the Meridian facility. His body is. But his consciousness, that's somewhere else. Somewhere I can't reach. But you might be able to. I don't understand. The business card. It's more than just a communication device. It's a gateway. Miranda glanced at the card on the cabin's small wooden table. She had kept it with her, though she wasn't entirely sure why. A gateway to what? To where they store the extracted consciousnesses. A realm outside physical space. Some might call it a digital afterlife, but it's more complex than that. Your father is there, along with the others they've taken, including me. The revelation hit Miranda like a physical blow. You're one of them. One of the test subjects. Yes, my name was James Connor. I participated in what I thought was a harmless sleep study 2 years ago. I never physically woke up. But my consciousness, it found ways to move through systems, networks. I discovered I could manifest in certain ways, through electronics, through reflections, through shadows. The shadow behind me, Miranda whispered. Yes, I've been following you since you received that email about the sleep study. I recognized the signs. I couldn't let them take you too. But why me? Why not someone else who signed up? Because of your father. Because his consciousness has been fighting them from the inside, just as I have from the outside. Because he taught me how to reach out, how to find the thin places where our realm connects with yours. And because of your cat, Pepper. Animals can perceive our realm more easily than humans. Especially cats. She saw me watching you. Instead of being afraid, she helped me. Brought you the card when I couldn't materialize it myself. Miranda looked at Pepper, who stared back with those inscrutable yellow eyes. Had her pet been communicating with this entity all along? What do you need me to do? She finally asked. Touch the card. Focus on your father. Think about him. Remember him. The card will create a temporary bridge, a way for you to glimpse our realm. If you can find him there, you can help guide him back. Back to what? You said his body has been a test subject for 5 years. His body is still viable. They keep the physical vessels in perfect condition. They're too valuable to discard. If his consciousness can find its way back, he can wake up. And if he wakes up inside their facility, he can help those of us who are still trapped. It sounded impossible. Insane. Yet after everything she had witnessed, Miranda couldn't simply dismiss it. Will I be in danger? Could I get trapped there too? The connection will be temporary. Think of it as a window, not a door. But be careful what you focus on. Attention is direction in our realm. What you look at is where you'll go. Miranda took a deep breath, picked up the business card, and closed her eyes. She thought of her father, his laugh, his voice, the way he would absent-mindedly tap his fingers when deep in thought. She remembered their last conversation before his accident, how he had seemed distracted, worried about something he couldn't discuss. At first, nothing happened. Then the card grew warm in her hands, then hot, not burning, but vibrating with an energy that traveled up her arms and throughout her body. When she opened her eyes, the cabin was gone. Miranda stood in a vast, shifting landscape of light and shadow. Streams of data flowed around her like luminous rivers, connecting swirling nebulae of consciousness that pulsed with thought and memory. It was beautiful and terrifying, ordered and chaotic simultaneously. Focus, James's voice echoed around her, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Remember what I told you. Attention is direction here. Think of your father. Miranda concentrated, picturing Edward Hayes with all the detail she could muster. The landscape responded, the streams of data shifting, creating a path before her. She followed it, moving not by walking but by intention, her consciousness flowing along the created route. The path led to a contained space, a perfect sphere of light surrounded by what appeared to be a translucent membrane. Inside, she could make out a human form, curled into a fetal position. Dad, her voice wasn't sound but thought, rippling through this strange realm. The figure stirred, uncurling slightly. A face turned toward her, older than she remembered, lined with exhaustion, but unmistakably her father's. Miranda? His voice was weak, distant. Not real, another trick. It's me, Dad. I'm really here. Well, not physically, but it's complicated. The sphere pulsed, the membrane rippling as if responding to his emotion. They've tried this before, creating phantoms of my family to make me cooperate. This isn't them. It's me. Miranda pressed her consciousness against the membrane, searching for a way in. Remember my 10th birthday? Mom was sick, so you took me to the planetarium instead of the party we'd planned. You bought me a star projector, and we spent the whole night making up constellations on my bedroom ceiling. The membrane thinned where she pressed against it. Her father's consciousness stirred more actively. Miranda, how are you here? Where's here? I don't have much time to explain. You were right about Meridian. Everything you suspected. I found your research, the evidence you collected. It's being published as we speak. Hope flickered in his consciousness, a literal brightening of his form. You found Rebecca? She found me. But they took her, Dad. Like they took you. His consciousness darkened with grief and anger. I tried to warn her. To warn everyone. We need to get you out of here. Back to your body. My body. After all this time. It's still viable. They've kept it maintained. The clinical word felt wrong, but it was accurate. If you can find your way back, wake up inside their facility. I've tried. For years, I've tried. The connection was severed. I can't find my way back. A new voice joined their conversation, resonating through the data streams around them. But I can help guide you. James's consciousness appeared beside them, a complex pattern of light more defined than the other entities Miranda had glimpsed in this realm. I've mapped the pathways, he continued. I've found the back doors in their system. I can't use them myself. My body is no longer viable. But yours, Edward, yours is waiting. How do we do this? Miranda asked. Your presence has already weakened the barriers, James explained. The familial connection, it creates resonances they can't fully block. But we need to act quickly. They'll detect the anomaly soon. The landscape around them shuddered, streams of data momentarily disrupted as if by some distant disturbance. Too late. James's consciousness pulsed with alarm. They've noticed. Miranda, you need to return now. Your window is closing. I can't leave him. You must. Your consciousness will be trapped if you stay. Her father's form pressed against the thinning membrane. Go, Miranda. I'll find my way back now that I know it's possible. James will help me. Promise me, she insisted. I promise. Now go. The landscape was fracturing around them, the beautiful order collapsing into chaos. Miranda felt a pulling sensation, dragging her consciousness back toward the entry point. Remember the facility address. James called after her. 4400 Lakeside Drive. The northwest entrance has the weakest security. 3 days from now, midnight. The last thing Miranda saw before the connection severed was her father's consciousness breaking through the membrane, flowing into the streams of data with James guiding him through the disintegrating pathways. Then she was back in the cabin, gasping, the business card smoking slightly in her hands before crumbling to ash. Pepper sat beside her, yellow eyes wide and watchful. He's coming back, Miranda whispered to the cat. We need to be ready. 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Miranda returned to the city cautiously, using cash withdrawn from an ATM far from her usual haunts. She rented a car under a false name, using an ID that Rebecca had given her along with the cabin key. Apparently, the journalist had been prepared for someone needing to disappear. The Meridian facility at 4400 Lakeside Drive was a sleek, modern building surrounded by meticulously landscaped grounds and an understated but effective security perimeter. Miranda observed it from a distance, noting the patrol patterns of the security guards and the locations of the surveillance cameras. At 11:30 p.m. on the third night, she parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. Pepper, surprisingly, had refused to be left behind, following Miranda with uncanny stealth. The northwest entrance, as James had indicated, had only a single camera and no visible guard. Miranda waited in the darkness of a nearby copse of trees, watching the seconds tick by on her watch. At 11:55, the security camera above the door suddenly rotated away from its usual monitoring position, pointing uselessly at the wall. James, Miranda thought. He was still able to influence electronic systems. She darted forward, Pepper at her heels, and tried the door. It was locked, but even as she touched the handle, she heard the electronic lock disengage with a soft click. Taking a deep breath, she slipped inside, finding herself in a dimly lit service corridor. Following emergency exit signs in reverse, Miranda made her way deeper into the facility. Twice she had to duck into utility closets as security personnel passed by. Each time, electronic distractions seemed to draw them away. Alarms sounding in distant sections of the building, radios crackling with static. At 12:10 a.m., she reached a door marked Long-Term Care Unit, authorized personnel only. The electronic lock on this door was more sophisticated, but as she approached, the green light blinked on and the door swung open of its own accord. Inside was a scene from a nightmare disguised as a medical facility. Rows of hospital beds filled the room, each occupied by a still form connected to life support equipment. The patients, victims, showed no signs of consciousness, though their vital signs displayed strong and stable on the monitors beside each bed. Miranda moved through the room, scanning each face, her heart pounding. So many of them. Young, old, male, female, all perfectly maintained physical vessels emptied of their essential selves. She found her father in the last row. His face was thinner than she remembered, his hair completely gray now, but unmistakably him. Unlike the others, his eyelids were fluttering, small muscles in his face twitching as if struggling to remember how to move. "Dad?" she whispered, taking his hand. "I'm here. Come back." His fingers twitched in hers, a slight pressure that might have been coincidence or might have been response. A soft mule drew her attention. Pepper sat at the foot of the adjacent bed, paws on the mattress, looking intently at the patient there, a young man in his early 30s, dark-haired and thin. James Connor. It had to be. Unlike her father, his body showed no signs of returning consciousness. The monitors showed a perfectly healthy but empty vessel. "I'm sorry," Miranda whispered to him. "Thank you for everything you've done." Her father's hand suddenly gripped hers with unexpected strength. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening. He looked at her, confusion giving way to recognition. "Miranda?" His voice was a rasp, throat unused to speech after so long. "Yes, it's me. We need to go. Can you move?" He struggled to sit up, muscles weak from years of disuse despite the physical therapy the facility must have provided to maintain muscle tone. "James," he guided me back. "The others, there are so many others." "We can't help them all right now," Miranda said, supporting him as his feet touched the floor. "We need to get you out first." "No." The firmness in his voice surprised her. "Not yet. There's something I need to do first. Help me to the main console." At the nurse's station in the center of the room, a computer terminal displayed monitoring data from all the patients. With Miranda's support, Edward reached the terminal and lowered himself into the chair. "James taught me more than just how to find my way back," he explained, fingers moving slowly but deliberately over the keyboard. "He showed me their system architecture, the backdoors, the fail-safes. There's a protocol, meant as a last resort if the facility needed to be evacuated. It will initiate a consciousness restoration sequence for all subjects." "Will it work? Can all these people come back?" "Not all," Edward admitted grimly. "Some have been separated too long. Some consciousnesses have fragmented or been used. But many could return, especially the recent subjects." He continued typing, bypassing security prompts with codes that James must have provided. Finally, he paused, finger hovering over the enter key. "Once I activate this, we'll have exactly 3 minutes before the backup systems kick in and security locks down the building." Miranda nodded. "Do it." He pressed the key. Immediately, alarms began to sound throughout the facility, but they were quickly drowned out by another sound, medical equipment activating simultaneously throughout the room. For pumps delivering new solutions, ventilators changing their rhythm, monitors blinking as new programs initiated. "Let's go," Edward said, struggling to his feet. They had made it halfway to the door when the first patient gasped, body arching as consciousness returned to long empty flesh. Then another and another. Throughout the room, people were returning to consciousness with varying degrees of distress and confusion, some crying out, others silent but wide-eyed with shock. "Help them," Edward gasped, leaning heavily against Miranda. "Those who can walk, tell them to follow us." Miranda raised her voice above the cacophony of alarms and confused voices. "Everyone who can move, follow us. We're getting out of here." Some were too disoriented to respond, but others, perhaps 15 out of the 50 or so patients, managed to disconnect themselves from the equipment and stagger to their feet. Among them was a woman Miranda recognized from news reports several months ago, a journalist who had supposedly died covering corporate corruption. "Rebecca," Miranda called out. The woman turned, her expression clearing slightly at the familiar face. "Miranda? How?" "No time," Miranda said, gesturing toward the exit. "Follow us." Pepper darted back to James Connor's bed, pawing insistently at his still form. His monitors showed activity, but his body remained motionless, eyes closed. "We can't wait," Edward said sadly. "Some won't make it back in time." The cat meowed loudly, a sound of such distress that Miranda hesitated. "Dad, get the others moving. I'll be right there." As Edward led the confused but mobile patients toward the exit, Miranda returned to James's bedside. Pepper was now standing on his chest, front paws on his face, yellow eyes fixed on his closed ones with fierce intensity. "James," Miranda whispered, taking his limp hand. "If you can hear me, we need to go. Now." For a moment, nothing happened. Then his fingers twitched in hers, once, twice. His eyes opened, unfocused and confused. "My body," he rasped, the words barely audible. "So heavy." "I know," Miranda said, helping him sit up. "But we need to move. Can you try?" With her support and Pepper somehow assisting by tugging at his hospital gown with her teeth, James managed to swing his legs over the side of the bed. His movements were uncoordinated, but determination shone in his eyes. "The others," he began. "Those who can walk are already moving," Miranda assured him. "We have less than 2 minutes before lockdown." She helped him to his feet, his weight nearly causing her to stumble. Together they staggered toward the exit where Edward was helping the last of the mobile patients through the door. The corridor beyond was filled with confused, stumbling figures in hospital gowns, following Edward's lead toward the northwest exit. Security alarms were blaring now, red emergency lights casting an eerie glow over the surreal procession. "1 minute," Edward warned as Miranda and James joined them. They had almost reached the exit when security personnel appeared at the far end of the corridor, shouting for them to stop. One guard raised what looked like a tranquilizer gun. Suddenly, all the lights in the corridor went out, plunging them into total darkness except for the dim glow of emergency exit signs. In the confusion, Miranda heard the guards shouting in panic as equipment malfunctioned around them, radios emitting painful feedback, the tranquilizer gun discharging harmlessly into the ceiling. "James," she whispered. "Not me," he managed between labored breaths. "Others, like me. Still, in the system." They reached the northwest exit just as backup generators kicked in and lights began flickering back on. Edward pushed the door open, and cool night air rushed in. One by one, the escaping patients stumbled out into the darkness, Miranda and James among the last to leave. Pepper darted ahead, seemingly leading them away from the facility and toward the tree line beyond the manicured grounds. Behind them, security personnel were regrouping, but their equipment continued to malfunction mysteriously. Vehicles wouldn't start, radios failed, even flashlights flickered erratically. "The others are helping us," James explained weakly as they reached the shelter of the trees. "Those whose bodies were too far gone, they're still in the system, fighting back." By the time they reached Miranda's rental car, they had been forced to leave several patients behind, those too weak to keep up or too confused to follow directions. But 19 had made it, crammed impossibly into and onto the vehicle. "Where do we go?" Miranda asked as she started the engine, adrenaline still coursing through her system. "The Chronicle," Rebecca said from the back seat where she was wedged between 2 other patients. "My deputy editor, if he sees us, all of us, he'll believe. And he'll help." Miranda drove as quickly as she dared, constantly checking the rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. Beside her, Edward was already using the burner phone, calling federal authorities with information about Meridian's facility and the escaped test subjects. "They'll try to discredit us," he warned after hanging up. "Make it look like we're delusional, or part of some mass hysteria." "Not if we get our story out first," Rebecca countered. "Not if we have proof." "We have more than proof," James said, his voice stronger now as he adjusted to being back in his physical form. "We have witnesses. And we have something they can't counter." "What's that?" Miranda asked. James smiled weakly. "We have allies they can't see or touch. The ones still trapped in their system. They'll continue the fight from the inside, corrupting data, releasing evidence, preventing Meridian from covering their tracks." As if in confirmation, every digital billboard they passed suddenly displayed the same message before going dark. "Meridian harvests souls. The shadows are watching." 6 months later, Miranda sat on her new apartment's balcony, watching the sunset. Pepper lounged nearby, basking in the dying light, occasionally opening one yellow eye to check on their visitor. James Connor sat in the adjacent chair, still thin but stronger now, more comfortable in his reclaimed body. "The Senate hearings start next week," he said, scrolling through news on his tablet. "Your father's testimony is scheduled for Tuesday." Miranda nodded. Edward Hayes had become the face of what the media now called the Meridian Scandal, his resurrection from supposed death making him impossible to discredit. 14 of Meridian's top executives and researchers were facing criminal charges, with more indictments expected. "What about the others?" she asked. "The ones still trapped in the system?" James set down the tablet, his expression solemn. "We're making progress. The technology your father and Rebecca recovered from the facility, we're adapting it, trying to find a way to give them new bodies, or at least a more stable existence." Not all the patients had successfully reconnected with their bodies that night. Some had returned only partially, their consciousnesses fragmented, requiring extensive therapy. Others hadn't returned at all, their physical forms remaining empty despite the activation protocol. And then there were those like James had mentioned, the ones whose bodies had been too damaged or whose consciousnesses had been used by Meridian's experiments, harvested for the valuable essence compound. Those consciousnesses remained in the digital realm, existing in a state neither fully alive nor truly dead. Shadows without bodies. "And Rebecca's exposé?" Miranda asked, changing the subject to something less painful. "Going to press next week. She's naming names, not just at Meridian, but government officials who looked the other way, investors who knew what they were funding." James smiled slightly. "She's unstoppable." Miranda's phone buzzed with a text message. She checked it, then showed it to James. "The shadow remains, but now it protects. Friends." The message came from nowhere, from a number that didn't exist. Just as the business card had appeared from nowhere, carried in the mouth of a cat who somehow knew more than she should. Pepper stretched languidly and hopped onto Miranda's lap, purring contentedly. Her yellow eyes, Miranda sometimes thought, still saw things invisible to human perception. The spaces between worlds. The thin places where reality frays at the edges. And the shadows that now watched over them, instead of hunting them. "Do you ever regret it?" Miranda asked suddenly. "Coming back? It would have been easier to stay, wherever you were." James considered this, watching as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, casting the balcony into shadow. "I was never meant to stay there," he said finally. "None of us were. Consciousness requires a body, if not the original one, then some form of vessel. What Meridian did was an abomination, not because they found a way to separate consciousness from body, but because they did it without consent, without care for the damage they caused." He reached out, his hand passing through a shadow cast by the balcony railing. For just a moment, Miranda thought she saw the shadow move against the direction of his hand, responding to his touch rather than being disrupted by it. "Besides," he continued, "there's work to be done here. People to help, wrongs to right, and shadows to watch over us," Miranda added softly. "Yes," James agreed, his eyes meeting Pepper's in a look of mutual understanding that Miranda couldn't quite decipher. Always the shadows. As night fell completely, Miranda could have sworn she saw other shadows moving across her balcony, shapes without sources, darkness flowing with purpose. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. After all, she knew exactly who they were. And they had her cat's approval.